If you clicked on this video, I assume you're ready to take off that participation badge you earned at your local Chuck E. Cheese Whack-A-Mole tournament and start flourishing into the park-lurking, underpass-dancing, fringe-having Necromancer that you were destined to be. Welcome to the Bone Zone, bitch. This is the quintessential Necromancer guide for levels 1 through 50. I value your time, so we're going to move pretty fast. Please pause to read the fine print if that's something you're into. This build is focused around control and burst damage. It uses two main abilities to control and apply AoE vulnerability. These are Bone Prison and Corpse Tendrils. And then two abilities to damage, Bone Spear and Bone Spirit. This build does not use Corpse Explosion. Trust me, your wrists will thank you later. The gameplay loop is simple but incredibly effective, and the damage output is absolutely absurd. You control the enemy, burst the enemy, rebuild your essence, and repeat. That's it. Simple, rewarding gameplay. On top of that, this build does not require any legendaries to be effective. Legendaries can absolutely make it better. There are definitely some which are, quote unquote, best in slot, but you don't need them. So this is a very consistent, reliable build. You alternate between your two crowd control abilities, Bone Prison and Corpse Tendrils, to restrict the enemy's movement, control them, and apply vulnerability, which you then use to do more damage for your Bone Spirit burst. When your essence gauge is maxed out, this is the best time to use this ability. When your Bone Spirit is on cooldown, you can mix in Bone Spears or simply focus on survivability, and then when the cooldown comes back up, you will go into your next control ability that you have off cooldown, and then repeat the same process. This build makes repositioning very, very easy during big AoE fights or boss fights, and affords you a lot of flexibility in terms of what you need to use to be the most effective. If you need to kill an ad, you have your Bone Spear ready. If you need to do massive AoE damage, you have the Bone Spirit if you time it correctly. And if you're just fighting the boss on its own, you can use those control abilities to outmaneuver the boss and dramatically reduce the amount of damage that you take from it. On top of this, you also have your Golem that you'll be using primarily as your sort of tank, which will take a lot of heat and a lot of attention off you while it's alive. Most of the gameplay on screen during this video will be anywhere from between level 40 and level 50. So the numbers will differ slightly throughout, but the potential should be obvious. Let's break down the skill tree. Okay, so Hemorrhage is going to be our primary essence generation ability, essence being the resource that you will use to spend on your more damaging abilities later on. The reason for this is mainly that it has a high essence generation rate, it's quite a fast ability, but also that one of the features of it is that it will have a chance to spawn blood orbs which will heal you. Very good for self-sustain. So we're going to start with 1 point here, and then we're going to take that all the way up into Enhanced Hemorrhage, which is going to make our ability hit multiple targets after we pick up a blood orb. And then finally, we're going to take the Acolyte's Hemorrhage, which will give us some more attack speed for faster generation. Next thing we are going to do is we're going to take Bone Spear. This is one of our primary single target damage abilities. And we're going to take that as well as Enhanced Bone Spear. And then finally, Supernatural Bone Spear, which will give vulnerability to the first enemy hit. Okay, on the next tree, we are going to be taking Bone Prison, one of our main control abilities. Once we've spent 1 point here, we're going to take Enhanced Bone Prison, which will give us some essence for every target locked inside the prison. And then we're going to pick up Ghastly Bone Prison, which makes all enemies vulnerable while they are inside the Bone Prison. Very, very important. Now, we still need a couple more points left to spend, so what we're going to do is we're going to go back, and we're going to pick up Hued Flesh, which is going to spawn corpses when we hit enemies, and we're going to take that all the way up to 3 points. Now, in this next chunk here of the skill tree, we're actually not going to take any of these. These are not a priority for us with this build. So what we're going to do is we are going to go back, and we're going to put more points into Bone Spear. Again, this is one of our primary damaging abilities, and that unlocks the next tier down here. So here we're going to pick up our next control ability, as well as our main damaging ability, Bone Spirit. I recommend taking Bone Spirit first. This is a huge burst ability that consumes all of your current essence to conjure a spirit that will then hit an enemy and explode, dealing massive AoE. We're going to take that, then we're going to pick up Corpse Tendrils, our next control ability, and then we are going to continue leveling up Bone Spirit. We're going to take Enhanced Bone Spirit, which means that the cooldown is reduced by 6 seconds whenever we crit with it. And then next we're going to take Dreadful Bone Spirit, which will give us some essence back after using it, which we can use on things such as Bone Spear. Once we've got these ones leveled up, we are then going to enhance our Corpse Tendrils to slow enemies, and then we are going to make it so that the Corpse Tendrils will stun and also apply vulnerability to all enemies affected. Again, massive AoE vulnerability for mass burst damage. From here, what I recommend is that you put another point into Bone Spirit, and then you level up Serration. We're going to be working our way around this dial here, picking up all of these buffs to our bone abilities. So we're going to go Serration, we're going to go into Rapid Ossification, and then we're going to put points into Evulsion, again buffing our damage to vulnerable targets, and then we're going to keep putting points into Bone Spirit until we can unlock Ossified Essence down here. Now, some people will be looking at this and be like, why didn't you pick up any ultimate abilities? The main reason for this is that we simply don't have the room on our skill bar for more abilities. And what we have now already does far more damage than something like Bone Storm could hope to do. So we've got that. Now what we want to do is you want to continue leveling up Bone Spirit. We want to have that maxed out as it's one of our primary damaging abilities. And then we can start putting points elsewhere on our skill tree where we're going to get a bonus to the overall playstyle. I like to put a couple more points into Bone Prison just to kind of increase the time that bosses, especially harder hitting enemies, are trapped within the Bone Prison itself without breaking free. And you can really here tailor it to whatever you like. Later on, I will be advising that people take the Golem summon, so I recommend putting points into the Golem as you face harder enemies. You'll want your Golem to have an easier time staying alive. And you can basically put anything in that will buff your damage. There are things, for example, like Death's Embrace, if you're playing a little bit closer to enemies, or alternatively, Death's Reach. These, basically anything that gives you a flat damage buff at this point will be very, very beneficial. And that is the core of the build all the way up to level 50. Let's very quickly go over the Book of the Dead feature, which is where you get your summons from as a Necromancer. Once you unlock the Golem, this is going to be your primary summon, but until you get to that point, you're probably going to want to use the Skeleton Warriors. I like the defensive guard Skeleton Warriors personally. Feel free to just pick whichever one makes the most sense for you and the one you enjoy the most right now. The Skeletal Mages will almost immediately be sacrificed as soon as we have access to the Cold Skeletons, as this bonus that we get from sacrificing them is a huge damage boost, considering a lot of our damage comes from applying vulnerability. Once you have the Golem unlocked, you're also going to sacrifice your warriors as well. This saves space on your ability bar, which we simply do not have space for anything else. As for which Golem to pick, I personally like either the Blood Golem with the damage boost and damage reduction, or I like the Iron Golem with the stun and vulnerability combo. And that's it. You now know the build. You've seen the gameplay in the video. Go out, try it for yourself. I guarantee you're gonna love it. And for more D4 content from me, you know what to do. Take care.